Welcome to the last lecture of the semester for Book and Journal Publishing. It has been an honor to be your instructor, and I've very much enjoyed working with you this semester. This lecture is called Towards a Digital Future, the University Press and Beyond. I'll be giving this lecture at an STM Masterclass this week, and I thought it would be good to share with you. I've adapted it a little bit to make sure it pertains to the work that we've been doing, and I'm very excited to share it with you. I'm also still in the midst of catching up with grading the assignments, which, because they are so well done, I want to spend more time with them and it's taking me longer. But you all have done an outstanding job this semester, and again, I'll say I'm very honored to have been your instructor. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this last ride um, for what I think has been a really fun time and a great semester. Thanks. So here is what we're going to talk about in this lecture. We're going to review the goals and competencies that we discussed at the beginning of the course. We're going to look at the landscape, the publishing landscape in the industry facing university presses. We're going to look at a financial overview of university presses as a whole, some of the experimentation that is going on, and what the future holds as far as challenges and opportunities. And I'll also talk a little bit about why we're going to focus on university presses. To me, they are really a microcosm of all the change that's going on within the industry. They're housed within universities, so there's an aspect that this is a mission-driven enterprise to disseminate information. They also are supposed to make money or break even, and that's a tension that they have to deal with. They publish all kinds of books, from trade to professional to scholarly, and they do digital publishing. So they're very much on the forefront of this change, and traditionally they have been reluctant to accept all of these changes that are going on. And how is that going to affect them in the future? Well, we'll see, and we'll get started. So now let's look at the goals and expectations we laid out at the beginning of this course. We're going to learn the basic fundamentals of book and journal publishing. You guys have demonstrated that with your assignments. A number of these assignments that were given were designed to do just this, and you put together P&Ls, and you did marketing plans, and you were able to really interpret what the goals of each assignment was, and you gave back to me exactly what I was looking for. I don't think there was any instance of any assignment where what was turned in wasn't at least very much in the ballpark as to what I was looking for. Evaluate and propose a publishing project from concept through to publication. You've done that, and you've done that well. Analyze and understand the financial implications of book and journal publishing. Many of you have demonstrated in your, when we reviewed the proposal for the Mellon Foundation about direct-to-consumer marketing, you all exhibited the ability to be able to determine whether that was a worthy proposal or not, and came up with some great questions to ask about it. Develop a marketing and sales plan for both books and journals. Some folks even did a book and a journal with that assignment. Describe the basic steps of the publishing process from manuscript to bound book. And we did some of that. There were a couple of assignments where you were able to articulate that. We didn't have a lot of emphasis on that, and maybe the next time I can focus in on some more assignments that'll bring that out. But you guys did grasp really the publishing process and have some knowledge of what that is. To grasp and understand the current state of the publishing business as it migrates from a print-based model to a digital-first environment. I can check that one off with 100% confidence that you all have learned that. Effectively communicate publishing concepts and strategies from an expanded base of knowledge. Absolutely. And looking some of the presentations that you've turned in for assignments 9 and 10, it's very evident to me that you understand and have learned, not only from this class, but also from the other classes that you have taken, and also from your experience, which is um, equally important. Many of you brought publishing experience to this class, and I can see that in the work that you've done. You've all worked very hard, and congratulations, because you have met my expectations and you have accomplished the goals. This is something I came up with at the beginning of teaching last year, and I titled this slide Towards a Publishing Competency, because I wanted to state front and center what it is that you need to know and to master to be successful in this business. How effective are your communication skills? Can you present a concept or an idea well? Do you embrace change? Do you understand technology? Can you analyze a situation or a product? And do you read? Again, you guys throughout the course of this semester have demonstrated these competencies, and you have demonstrated them well. You have communicated, presented, um, embraced concepts such as ebooks and different types of publishing scenarios very well. You have a good grasp of technology, and you can analyze situations and products and make proposals. And for the most part, everyone in this class reads. I mean, you look at your discussion board and all of the things that are happening there and flourishing there. And you guys are developing not only the competencies, but your own community together. And I really wish you luck, Cohort 9, as you move forward in this program. And anything you need, certainly, please don't hesitate to ask, whether it be related to your career or related to a project or a product that you're proposing. I'm happy to answer your questions, and I'm available by email and by phone. It has been a pleasure, as I said before, and an honor teaching you. Okay, so let's dig into this issue further. Why university presses? I said before, they publish many types of books and journals: trade, course books, professional works, scholarly journals, magazines in some cases, literary journals. Um, the changes that are occurring are going to threaten their existence if they don't embrace them. Um, Universities are beginning to see publishing as a library press venture. There's a very interesting development on one of the job boards. There's the title of Associate University Librarian and Press Director in one title. So you're going to be wearing the hat of a librarian, but also one as the press director. And it's very interesting from a number of perspectives, because universities are really where the research is being done and where it's being given over to publishers and where they're having to buy it back. So a lot of the push for open access and to make content freely available is happening within universities, and I think this uniting with the press from a library perspective could produce a number of possibilities in the future. And there may be a way to solve this conundrum in terms of open access and charging lots of money for this information. And when you think about university presses and the prices that they're charging for their monographs, there are many that are having to raise the price of a monograph, which is essentially a scholarly work. It's an expanded dissertation. They're only selling 300 copies of those now, and the reason is because they're having to raise the price point to the point of $70 to $80 to $90, and that's really not affordable for scholars and researchers. That's very expensive, and some of this has to change. Are there more efficient ways to do it? Can these monographs be digitally distributed, and we create a different type of paradigm and channel? And those are questions that are going to be fun to answer in the future. And this is where it leads me to the last bullet. UPs, university presses, have a unique opportunity to be part of the solution. I think there's a way for these organizations to embrace what's happening in publishing and to make a success out of it. I mean, when you think about a university, where's the IT talent, up and coming IT talent uh, that's available. It's within the university setting. There's probably a lot of things that can be learned from how students are doing things, and that's something we at Johns Hopkins University Press should take much more advantage of. I mean, the days of the subject catalog and sending things out through the mail to get people to purchase things, I think, are largely over. And it's time that university presses start embracing that. And really, I'd like this presentation to be kind of my call to action to university presses to really begin to behave like the rest of the publishing community. So, this is the situation we're living in. This is a quote from The Economist that appeared in October. University presses face the same difficulties as commercial publishers, such as digitization and the decline of bookstores, as well as some of their own. There has been a decades-long shrinkage in demand for their titles, as the rising price of scientific journals has left libraries less money to spare for buying new books. Academic monographs are considered a splash today if they sell just 800 copies in their first year. Public and private universities, under financial pressure, are scrutinizing the subsidies they give their presses. Some have talked of shutting them. Now, I've heard this same mantra for the past 3 or 4 years, and we're now going to look at a case study where a university did try to shut down their university press. And I was actually pretty intimately involved in that situation. Sometime in 2012, the University of Missouri Press received notification from the university, from the president's office, that they would be shutting down. And the reasons given for closing the press were that it was losing close to $400,000 a year. And um, this caused a major outrage in the publishing community. You see in the far left of this slide the Save the University of Missouri Press Facebook page. So many of the authors, and many of those authors who also had contracts pending with the University of Missouri Press, sort of revolted and really were outraged over this. The University of Missouri Press published the works of Langston Hughes. They had a very robust, or have a very robust Mark Twain series, and published a lot of great regional books about Missouri. And the press is a treasure in a lot of ways. Its history is rich, with lots of great writers. One of the writers is William Least Heat Moon, and many of these writers really got moving and started causing lots of, you know, raising a lot of concerns. And one of the reasons it was speculated that the University of Missouri Press was being closed was because the University of Missouri had just joined the SEC, which is a fairly high-profile football conference, and needed to pour the money into the football program. And you see one of the cartoons that shows coming soon $72 million in improvements to the Missouri athletic facilities. And the outrage grew to a certain point. There were lawsuits from the authors about what was happening with the contracts they signed, and they quickly realized that they were not going to be able to close the press because of those contracts they had with their authors. So they backpedaled. They got together and said, we're going to reinvent the press. And this, they fired the editor-in-chief, Claire Wilcox, who was there, and then installed one of the editors of the Missouri Review, which is a literature journal, and he was going to lead this kind of reinvention where students were going to run the press, and this was going to be the model that the press was moving forward with. And that did not last long. And then they started a nationwide search for a new director and reinstated Claire Wilcox. This story went all the way as far as the New York Times. It was getting lots of play. a guy by the name of Bruce Joshua Miller, who was an independent book sales rep for publishers. He also was very heavily involved in the resistance to trying to close this press down. And when you think about closing a university press, you really are taking um, a lot of an institution's intellectual treasures and putting them at risk. And this whole idea of widespread dissemination of knowledge and information becomes in conflict with sort of the bottom line uh, driven financial offices of universities. And they were losing $400,000 a year, which I'll mention is 6 times less than the Johns Hopkins University Press is losing in any given year. And the reason Johns Hopkins University Press doesn't come under this kind of scrutiny is because of things like their journal program and Project Muse, which is plowing lots of revenues to keep everything balanced and to make everything come out even. So the nationwide search began, and I put my name in the ring and applied for the position and was a finalist for this position. And the reason why I wanted to apply was because I thought I could make a difference and I could turn this press around. And that's really what I'm looking to do in my career, and have always looked to do in my career, is to really be in a place where there's a huge challenge and try and meet that challenge and try to do something different and experiment and have fun. And I got to be a finalist, and they sent me an email that said that they needed to go public with the final 4 candidates or 3 candidates, and I told them that I didn't want my name posted on the website because I have a staff of 30, and that wasn't going to be great if they knew about this, so I withdrew my name. But I definitely would have loved the opportunity to try to turn this press around and try to make it come out and break even. But it's a fascinating story, and I encourage you to investigate it in your spare time. And it brings up all of the issues around publishing and all of the change that's happening. And I wish them the best of luck. I hope they do turn the press around. They've got a new director now, and we'll see how that goes. So, anyway, we'll move on and talk about more things related to university press publishing. Here's some general information on university presses. There are 133 university presses registered with the American Association of University Presses. Most of these lose money and require financial assistance from the universities. Many are moving under the library for oversight. Many are already under the library for oversight, including MIT, Indiana, Michigan, NYU. There are several who report into the library. There are large commercial based university presses like Oxford University Press and Cambridge University Press, where they operate to make a profit. They're not for profit, but they behave very much like commercial publishing companies. University of Chicago Press, Princeton University Press, and Yale University Press are large university presses, and they also operate to some degree like commercial publishing houses. They make a substantial amount of money, and they're one of a handful of university presses that actually make money. I talked a little bit about the new positions that are emerging within the university press landscape. We talked about Michigan, where there's a position posted now for a university librarian and press director. The transition to digital has been slow and painful, and the environments within these organizations, it's a very closed environment. Books are very separate from journals. There's not a lot of integration. Um, there are there's a reluctance culturally to really embrace their digital future, and there's not a lot of everyone is still doing things the same way, still trying to generate interest in their books by placing print ads in magazines and publications like the New York Review of Books. Um, there's still a lot of direct mail. There's still subject catalogs and seasonal catalogs that are being printed. And this is a very expensive endeavor, and I don't think that Those things are very effective. They can't really be measured or tracked. And, it's just this kind of idea that this is going to go on forever. Um, and so that's kind of where we are. This is very much these presses have operated very similar to the way they've operated for the last 15 to 20 years. As a sort of continuation from the previous slide, here are some challenges and opportunities that are facing university presses. Book publishing metrics have always been very difficult to obtain. Um, the distributors and wholesalers and people who are the middle, in the middle ground selling books, have long kept that information as to where those books are going. So you can't really tell, who's actually buying your books and where the books are ending up. Amazon is really having a big effect on university presses. It's many of these presses' primary sales channel, which wasn't always the case. There's a big fear within these firms of losing course adoption sales to libraries because of ebooks, and they're very protective of the ebooks. They don't want the ebooks to be have unlimited downloads. They want to protect them with digital rights management, and they're almost the culture is almost that they are happy to not have their books be downloaded, because if a book is downloaded too much, they are of the belief that they are losing course adoption sales. And there are many reasons why course adoption sales are diminishing, one of which is the book rental market. Students are able to obtain these texts from other students. Um, in the social sciences and the humanities, these departments are going away. There are less students in these programs, and that's also having an effect. The academy very much is still a print-centric culture. Tenure is still, to a large degree, based on that print publication. Libraries are supportive of the university presses, especially the libraries where there are university presses, but that's to a point. They're not going to expend valuable resources for content that's largely niche based, and they're not going to um, really tie up a lot of their resources in big collections of this content if they're not sure that their communities are really going to read them and access them. The presses themselves have very little understanding of what goes on in libraries, other than the fact that they perceive it to be a place where everybody can access everything for free and download it and steal content. And this is the mindset that that I work with every day, that I'm trying to change. In fact, I'll have a conversation tomorrow with the press who's convinced they're losing course adoption sales with our ebook aggregation. And there are many things and many forces going on that are affecting not only university presses but other presses too, which is what makes university presses, I think, pretty interesting to look at. Again, is that microcosm of the publishing industry and what's going on and how it's changing. There's a lot of tension within university presses and between university presses and their libraries and their universities. Largely, universities are mission driven. Um, University presses were started. The Johns Hopkins University Press was one of the first presses that were started, and its mission was to widely disseminate information, to advance knowledge, to create a sustainable model, recover costs. Um, and on the other side of it, commercial publishing firms are really interested in maximizing profits, achieving sales targets, driving net margins, generating surplus. And these forces are battling against each other within the university setting because the economy is not great. And so when the Johns Hopkins University Press can turn a profit at the end of the year, it's very much something that the university looks at that they're very interested in, because most of the departments and centers at a university are not profit making. So what we're doing now is trying to minimize the amount of excess that there is, because and reinvest it, because otherwise the university is going to be taking that money and putting it into their own accounts. But this is this is where the tension is. It's between mission driven and margin driven, and it's much more prevalent within university presses today to actually make money and to have sustainability, and makes it a very interesting and fertile ground for experimentation and ideas and ways to do things differently. And I think the key here is to achieve a balance, to try and find a balance of those factors. This slide should look familiar to you. We had this early in the semester, and um, I like to start with the statement that content containers are melting away. At Project Muse, we built an integrated book and journal platform where chapters and articles are available, and that's the unit of access. That's what's being measured when we look at usage statistics, is our chapters and articles. And we're very much interested in that approach. And what happens, when what gave us kind of the idea to build an integrated platform was when we were looking at the library search interface at Johns Hopkins, and we saw that the results set, basically, you couldn't tell whether it was a book or a journal or um, what publisher had published it. It was just content that was being delivered into the search results. And as you dug further, you might be able to determine whether it was a book chapter or a journal article. But I think this is becoming more and more the norm. The units of information, this is what the researchers are looking for. Mergers will continue to counteract Amazon, Penguin, and Random House. That's a margin play. They'll by merging, they begin to own 25% of the trade market. And the Justice Department is looking very favorably on Amazon these days, because of the prices that Amazon is able to deliver to the consumers, and that's problematic for the publishers. And in reality, though, Amazon is working to have a monopoly on the market. They're, in some, the word is that, and I've read articles on this, that they will begin to start charging more for these titles, but currently they're charging less, much less than what the publisher is charging, and in order to capture the market share. Open access will continue to challenge traditional book publishing models as well as journal publishing models. It's moving over into the book side. There are some initiatives that are coming along. Questions are being asked, such as what would it take to buy a book into the open? How many libraries do you need to purchase a book that will actually allow it to be free? There will continue to be disruption, disaggregation, and denial on the part of certain publishers to participate in this. There's a harkening back to maybe when the economy changes, there'll be more book buyers, and we'll be able to continue doing things the same way we've always done them. Now we'll take a look at some of the statistics of university presses and go into a little bit of a case study. Every year, AAUP puts out their annual statistics, and this chart shows the most recent statistics from the performance in 2012. The presses are grouped in 4 groups. The Group 4 presses, which there are 9 of, earn more than $6 million in gross sales. Group 3 is from $3 to $6 million in sales. Group 2 are comprised of presses earning $1.5 million to $3 million, and in Group 1 it's everything up to $1.5 million. And only 9 of the presses are Group 4. The rest of the 124 presses left are in Group 3 to Group 1. But there are only 66 presses reporting in this report. And I guess the good news is that the cumulative annual growth from 2009 to 2012 was 5.6%, and it's the first year overall that presses have seen growth in the last 4 years. And you're looking at pretty much the results of the recession and the results of some contraction in the way books are sold. But there hasn't been a lot of good news to report, and I've included some statistics in the notes on this slide for you to look at. But this just gives you a kind of the idea when you look back to 1986 and the kinds of things that were happening in this sector, and now the growth is very modest, and the trend looks to be reversing from what's been happening the last 3 or 4 years or so. Here's a pretty good look at the revenue breakdown. The 9 presses over 6 million account for 152.9 million. Then you have Group 3, 73.4 million, and then it drops down to 36.2 million in Group 2 and 17.6 million in Group 1. You see, and there's the largest number of presses in Group 1. A lot of these operations are fairly small, putting out 20 to 40 new books a year. In contrast, Johns Hopkins publishes 200 books a year, so 150 of which are new, 50 are reprints, and that's kind of, just looking at this pie chart gives you an idea. The total revenue of those presses reporting encompasses $280 or so million. So there's a lot of revenue generated by this sector. And it's important to look at the makeup and see how these presses shake out. Now we're looking at specifically the Johns Hopkins University Press, and we shared this slide in a previous presentation. You're looking at the large green bar, which is online retailers. That's where Amazon sales are, and that's grown to 34%. That used to be 2 to 3 years ago 18%. It's gone from 18 to 25 to 34, and that just shows you the growth of that line. Libraries are 4%, wholesalers 24%, and very little with the direct-to-consumer, 5%. And that's a channel that we have reviewed with the proposal, the Mellon-funded proposal that you guys looked at. But really, that's new territory and a possible new place for presses to experiment and to try to improve on that online ordering experience, and maybe link that to social media and try to generate some more sales. Here we look at the makeup of the book buyers, and predominantly scholars are buying JHUP books. There's some professionals, some students, some libraries, and general consumers. So here you have all of the different publishing types. It's not specifically trade or not specifically professional, but you have all of them. You have general consumers, which are the trade books. You have libraries, which that's the course adoption titles. The large student population buying these books, most likely for courses, but also probably for other things too, depending on whether they're graduate students or undergraduate students. You see scholars, they're most likely within university settings, but also professionals. That's almost 10% of the market. So 34% is really trade and professional, and then you have about 77% that's within the academic settings, is what it looks like here, based on the data from the marketing department at the Johns Hopkins University Press. But interesting to look at, and it's kind of the reason why we want to talk about university presses, because they have, when it comes to books, most of the areas included, and they also do publish a fair amount of science books, both for the lay person and for the scientists. Hopkins publishes some engineering texts, And so you run really, it's a very diverse product mix, and it's something when you're thinking about what's happening in publishing that makes for a good fertile ground for discussion. Now we're looking at digital revenues from the Johns Hopkins University Press, and you can see the growth of the consumer line from 48.6 thousand in 2010 to 461,000 in 2013. And this is the fiscal year budget, which is a June to June cycle, which is also what universities look at and how they measure their finances. Project Muse works on a calendar basis, but also has to adhere to the fiscal budget as well. But you see this line, the consumer line really refers to Kindle, Nook, um, the Apple Bookstore, things like that, Google Books, all the revenue that's being generated from ebooks to consumers. On the institutional side, this is work with eBrary, EBSCO, and also Project Muse. So you see from FY12 to FY13 that big jump largely has to do with a significant payment from their participation in our ebook aggregation. Online refs is a line. We have a program of 4 or 5 of these, like the Eisenhower papers or the first Federal Congress papers, things like that that we've digitized, and that's kind of stayed pretty stable. It's grown a little bit, and it's a line that we're looking to integrate within Project Muse, just to have more varied content that will be integrated with books and journals. And as you see, this is a pretty significant growth since 2010 from 1.6% of the total revenues to now 10%. And that's about tracking with maybe a little bit lower than all of university presses in terms of an average. But it continues to grow, and the press is doing more and more ebooks and putting more and more things on Kindle in hopes to grow this line in the future. Now, here's the really exciting thing. Discovery and dissemination weren't terms that were even being used at the Johns Hopkins University Press 2 to 3 years ago, and now they're beginning to really embrace this idea of having their metadata be discoverable. They were awarded a gold medal for their metadata, and something that they pride themselves on, ensuring that it's perfect, ensuring that it's good. They participate in discovery programs such as Amazon Search Inside the Book, Google Book Search, the Thomson Reuters Book Citation Index. You look at the consumer side, they're opening channels there, and these are all agreements that they have with all of these third parties: Kindle, Nook, Google, Apple. We mentioned some in the previous slide: Kobo, Sony. HFS is Hopkins Fulfillment Service, and they have an ebooks program too, where they're generating some sales. Their library aggregations are eBrary, EBSCO, Project Muse, Overdrive, and ACLS, which is a humanities initiative and ebooks initiative, so they're participating in that. But they're very careful, especially in the library aggregations, to not put their course titles or books that they perceive to have potential for course titles in these aggregations. But they continue to see their course titles decrease, and that has to do with what's happening in the economy and what's happening within universities and with these students. They're not actively seeking a place where they can spend the full price on a title. They're looking to get it in any way possible at a reduced rate. There's opening channels to students as well. Vital Source, Chegg, and MBS Textbook Exchange. They're participating in a lot of these things. Cafe Scribe, seeing what sticks. Having their content in as many of these places as possible to just see what comes back. And some of these end up being profitable, some are not profitable, but you have to experiment and you have to try to make these things happen. Here's a pretty interesting slide that shows how things have changed in the last decade in the way books are produced, promoted, distributed, and read. Basically, in 2001, firms are publishing for the backlist. They're still doing that today, but they're doing it differently. You had offset printing back then, and firms have moved to digital printing. You had color separations and text blue lines mailed back and forth. Now you have one actual book printed based on the cover and text block and PDFs uploaded. That's a huge change. You had the mindset in 2001 to keep a lot of copies around. Now we're in as needed mode. You could print when you're printing those large print runs. You can get the unit cost down to $2.50 a book. Now, if you're doing it on an as-needed basis, it's about $4 to $8 a book, so your unit costs rise because you can't spread the unit costs across a large number of copies. You've got the warehousing costs back then, and today, not really. If you're doing it smart, you need to. In terms of distribution, you used to have to go in and pitch every title to Ingram and Amazon, and now titles are automatically available through Ingram and Amazon. The sales were 85% bookstores back then. Now they're about 15% bookstores. Royalties were 8 to 12%. Now they're 10 to 15%, with authors expecting more more revenues for the electronic. You have hardcover and paperback, and now you have hardcover, paperback, and ebook. So a very simple look at how things have changed. It's reduced. Digital printing has reduced upfront printing costs, completely eliminated warehousing costs, and greatly controlled the number of returns. Meanwhile, social media and the role of the author are changing the way books are marketed, and at long last, user-friendly ebook readers are altering the way books are purchased and read. And this was provided by the City Lit Project. It's a publisher in Baltimore who really publishes only books in the way that they're discussed in the 2011 column. That's how they're able to efficiently and cost-effectively bring books into the market. The good news is that there are within university presses some experiments going on. There are many innovative projects that firms are undertaking to try and find something, a new way of doing things, to streamline their production processes, to sell more, to market more efficiently, to leverage social media. There are a number of things that are going on, and I'll cover a few of them here. The University Press eBook Consortia was founded in 2009 and was given funding by Mellon to come up with a model and find a vendor to help them distribute ebooks for 65 university presses. And at Hopkins, we had already started looking at this and taking a much more practical view of how to just start doing this ourselves. And we were asked to bid on an RFP was sent out, and we were asked to respond to it. And we ended up winning the bid and creating the University Press Content Consortia. And at that time, we were going up against Oxford University Press, JSTOR, and Cambridge University Press. And we had to go in and make a presentation and really earn the trust of these 65 publishers who had gotten the Mellon grant. And they had done extensive market research. They had developed a model that said, 80 of the 123 million in the first 5 years was going to come from the backlist, and had done a lot of things. And they chose a vendor because they felt they wanted a vendor who was going to undertake their plan and undertake their model. And one thing I've learned in publishing in my 30 years of publishing is that models are models, and that's what they're there for. And the market will determine exactly what your model is going to be, and you can get a model right, I think, at about 80%, 60 to 80%, but there's going to be some compromise and adjustments made. So we now have 100 publishers in that program, 25,000 ebooks, and are approaching 10 million in sales since we launched in 2012. And it's been a really interesting journey thus far. But this continues to be an experiment, and we continue to learn. And with 100 book publishers who are giving us their ebooks, as you can imagine, there are lots of different workflows that you need to create to make sure that you can harness all this content, put it into the right collections, classify it, synthesize it, and create it in a special way for the end users. Books at JSTOR is also a very prominent ebook aggregator, and they have most of the Group 4 presses. JSTOR is working with Yale and Princeton and Harvard and some of the other Group 4 presses. Also Oxford, the University Press, Scholarship Online, that's what UPSO stands for. They're also formidable. They have about 20 or so presses. JSTOR has around 25. And we're all out there together. There's some overlap on the platforms. And the one thing about the Project Muse platform is that these titles are DRM free, and you can download them. They're unlimited downloads. Another thing that you're seeing is a traditional book distributor, Yankee Book Peddler, which was really a prominent print book distributor, has really reinvented their business and offers single title e-sales and e-approval plans for their many libraries that they work with. And we have integrated our single title ebook sales program with them. And they are very much a firm that's trying to reinvent themselves as well. They have a lot of staff who are catalogers and bibliographers who take these books and classify them for libraries and have been doing so for print. And now they create these approval plans that really are a profile for that university to be able to say, we've ordered a lot of this kinds of content in the past, and here's our profile, and they're just sending books that fit that profile. And now they're doing that digitally, and that's helping the presses to create another channel. The University of California Press is a very interesting story. Allison Muddett, who came from Sage, is the press director there, and she's restructured that press and really has created kind of product families of the content and put the books and journals together. So if you're an editor, you're acquiring books, you're acquiring journals, you're responsible for journals, and it's very much an integrated approach. And it's the first university press that I've ever heard do that. Many STM companies are organized that way, where you're organized around the products and the disciplines, because you really can't market content in consumer health the same way you're going to market your monographs in history. I think there needs to be a different approach there, and I support this. Knowledge Unlatched is an interesting initiative. That's something coming from a person named Frances Pinter, who was a PhD student and who founded a press, an imprint, while in graduate school, and her apartment was the warehouse, and she's just kind of grown up through and been very successful. She worked for the Source Foundation for many years, and the concept is to take books and to find the number of libraries who would purchase them that would then allow the books to be open access. And that pilot program for Knowledge Unlatched is underway, and they're going to monitor this in the next 11 months to see which of these titles are actually now enough money has been generated that they are now open access. And the Johns Hopkins University Press and Temple University Press have engaged in something called instant books, which are books that are published on a very short time frame. Shortly after the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary, Mayor Bloomberg of New York contacted Ron Daniels, the president of the Johns Hopkins University, and convened a summit down at the Bloomberg School of Public Health that was called Reducing Gun Violence in America. President Daniels called the press and asked us if we would publish a book. Good news is we're selecting you as publisher. Bad news is it's got to be out 3 weeks after the summit occurred, because the legislation was getting ready to be brought and before Congress and the Senate. And our book publishing folks put their heads together and published this book in 3 weeks at the end of January in 2013. And We got a little subvention, a little amount of money from the president's office to do that, and the PDF of the book immediately went to all of the politicians in Washington. It had to be carefully choreographed, and it helped inform the legislative debate. It's a very professionally done book and an excellent book, and it's one way to look at, um, you know, could university presses reinvent themselves as kind of the long form of journalism? Is there a way to have these kinds of books appear very quickly so that they can inform policy, inform debate, and be very much current and tackling issues that are not necessarily niche or abstract, but are very much part of our daily lives? And this has been a very successful project and will continue to be. It was captured in the New Yorker recently. They wrote about this book, and it covers all of the presentations, including Michael Bloomberg's 7-point plan to reduce gun violence. And it was a very I think a cathartic experience for the staff to be able to show this kind of a triumph from a university press, to be able to move quickly. The vision and the impression is that these presses are dinosaurs that move very slowly, and this is doing a great job of showing that that's not the case. And here's my book, and certainly I like to include my book as an instant book. It's very much an extended form of journalism covering the Ravens Super Bowl victory in 2012. And it was written in 60 or so days and published by Temple University Press. And it came out of the desire to really help the university press. It also came out of a conversation I had with a George Washington Publishing student named Heather McDaniel, and she said to me, "You should publish a book." And I said she meant a book about publishing, and I thought, I don't know that you really need a book about publishing. You really have to work in publishing to experience it. But then I thought, you know what? I'm going to publish my own book, and it's I think doing reasonably well in sales, and it's helping Temple Press to improve upon a year that's been a struggle for them. And we're hoping that with the holidays coming along, that the book will be even more accessible, and there will be more sales generated. But at most, it's only available on hardcover, and at most right now, from the author's perspective, and you're getting one that's fresh. This is a break-even proposition. At some point, I may get a royalty check that'll allow me to break even. I had to really pay for the photographs and pay for the cover, and paid for my own editor to review based on that short time frame. I needed somebody I trusted to read the content and to edit it, and because I was mainly focused on quality, and I'm very pleased with the result. But this was most definitely an instant book to try and help a university press, try and help increase sales for these presses. Now let's turn to the future of the university press and look at some things that are happening, and get outside the box a little bit and think about what things could look like. This is one comment that has stuck with me over the course of the last year. I'm an author. Agents don't want my books. Publishers don't want my books. The Authors Guild doesn't want me because the publishers don't want me. Amazon welcomed me as an independent author, and $62,000 in sales indicate that customers want my books. I made $1.95 on each sale at $2.99. That's $120,000 in my pocket, $64,000 in Amazon's pocket, and zero in the pockets of agents, publishers, and bookstores. You don't want me in your ecosystem. I have joined another, and this has got me intrigued to the point where I think I might like to try to go through this channel with my next book, just as an experiment and just to learn. It was taken from the comments section of an article about copyright, and it stuck with me as something that I think the future, we're going to see more of this. We're going to see books going right into the e-readers. We're not going to have print copies for certain types of books, and I really believe that this is coming. And um, I think that it's a very liberating feeling to be able to do something like this. Of course, you need to be concerned about quality. You need to make sure that what you're doing and what you publish is of a certain level of quality, because the market will speak if it isn't, and you got to be careful there. But technology is moving along to the point where these publishing companies are no longer publishing companies. They're no longer they're more technology companies. They're having to invest in technology and to improve their products from a technological perspective, and this is costing them money. So when you see something like this, it really makes you pause and think about what that future could be. Here are some trends to watch. Um, at a recent conference I attended, the discussion was about demand driven access to journals. We now have this for books, and what that entails, patron driven access or demand driven access entails, is opening up the book's metadata to a whole university population and then having them access the titles, and on the third or fourth or fifth or sixth download, depending on the threshold level, a purchase is triggered. And in response, or to counteract the big deal, on the journal side, there are some librarians talking now about having demand-driven access for journals. Very interesting concept, something that will, I think, be of concern to large commercial companies such as Elsevier and Wiley and Springer. We're also seeing the entrance of huge technology companies into the publishing space. Amazon buys the Washington Post. Or Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post. That's very interesting. I happen to think that's a lot about user behavior and business intelligence, market intelligence, try to reach that market they're not reaching. Amazon has also just recently launched a literary journal called One Day or Day One. I can't. It's on my Kindle. I can get that, which is also very interesting to me that they want to become a primary publisher. Mobile platforms continue to expand, and there's some talk of those becoming the primary access points for consumers and readers and scholars and the whole ecosystem. As publishers, as aggregators, we're moving from acquiring products to figuring out what services we can provide. That we are going to be more service driven in the future to our publishers. We're going to be handling things like digital object identifiers and things for our publishers that aren't built, that don't have the infrastructure to be able to do these things. It's kind of the next phase of, we were there to help them put their content online, and now we're going to be there to help them streamline their internal operations by providing services. Consumerization, there is a movement towards consumerization. You read a proposal about that. That was the direct-to-consumer proposal, and we've been talking for years about how do we make Project Muse, with its millions of users, able to do many more things than just download chapters and articles. Why wouldn't you want to allow somebody to talk about something with someone else, or develop a community? Why wouldn't you want another researcher to order the full-length copy of the book to download to the Kindle? Why wouldn't you have these users, and they're a captive audience? Why wouldn't you want to offer publishers the opportunity to leverage that and to benefit from it? So these are the kinds of things that we're discussing on a daily basis, making investments in and trying to figure out. We're going to be hopefully building a new demand-driven access model for books, because I feel we're really missing almost 2/3 of the market by not having this. There are universities that are mandated now that the only ebook collections they can purchase are the ones that they want to get on demand. It's very much an on-demand mindset that's out there today, and that's an opportunity for us to capitalize on. From a macro perspective, what's happening in areas like consumer behavior? You have the hyperabundance of content on the web, a lot of unrestricted content. And what's that doing to book sales or content sales when You have somebody that's looking for something and good enough is okay. It doesn't have to have that imprimatur. The web has its own imprimatur for certain people, its own brand recognition. People are absorbing much more granular chunks of information every day. Um, we're constantly insulted with information. Uh, you know, you're no longer quote unquote reading a book. You may be reading one on Kindle, watching a TV series, and monitoring Twitter feeds on your phone. Our attention spans are fragmented. We're waking up in the morning, and the first thing that we're doing every day is checking our iPhones for our email. Um, it's really hard. We're kind of an ADD culture these days, and I think if free is good enough, then that's fine when it comes to content. So you're combating all of this noise that's out there already. Um, the print newspaper has largely gone away. You're going to your computer to get your daily news. Um, it's a whole different ballgame out there, and as a publisher, as a content developer or content acquisition specialist or somebody who's generating content, you've got to figure out all different kinds of avenues and channels to make it happen. Can't forget about open access. It's here to stay. Um, Internet equals free. Information yearns to be free. This was what really kind of started this way back, I think, in the 90s. That whole idea that if it's on the internet, there's a certain value attached to it, and it's not a high level of value, and the idea that it should be free. I get the fact that universities are funding research and then paying again to access it. This is an issue. I'm totally there. I think the author pays model is a somewhat sustainable model. I don't think authors in certain disciplines have the grant money to be able to fund their article into the open. I think that maybe things need to be done at a higher level to ensure that the humanities is preserved and that there's some funds available for that. Um, it's become a global movement that is changing the perception of publishers. The UK is continuing to mandate open access, and this will have a significant impact on the humanities and social sciences. There's no you need to embrace it. You need to. Associations too are looking at this and saying, well, we want to provide content free to our members. That's um, part of our mission is dissemination. We want to advance the knowledge of the field, and it's very much, I talk to lots of association people whose boards are very much pushing for the content aspect of it to be made free. Don't we have enough resources and funds? Isn't this something that will be a game changer for our membership and bind them to us for a long period of time? So open access, I think, is something to watch. And again, once again, there are opportunities there to embrace for any innovative publisher. The one thing all publishers, and especially university presses, should be aware of is that disruption, disaggregation, discovery, and denial are all contributing drivers to change. You've got Web 3.0, mobile devices, iTunes, file sharing, all of this disruption, social book, the idea that hubs of authority, comments in a box, the engagement of readers around content, the disaggregation of content, articles, chapters, objects, data sets, snippets, abstracts, and you have the discoverability of those things all around driving usage. You have unlimited, the desire for unlimited access and sharing and proliferation, and you have a big sort of group of in the ecosystem that's denying this. You've got publishers that are in protectionist mode. You've got attorneys filing lawsuits about fair use. It's very much a lot of forces banging together to try and find some sort of happy medium here. But this is going to continue, and some things are going to shake out. Many firms, including university presses, aren't going to survive unless they embrace a lot of these things. And I think it's a great opportunity to really take part in something new, to be part of what this next thing is going to look like. And I think it's good to jump in and try and experiment and see where that leads. And I'll share with you some of our strategic initiatives that we're talking about at Project Muse. And one of the things we've been thinking about is we have a very strong brand. Um, we're a leading provider of content in humanities and social sciences. We have 200 publishers, 2,700 libraries, as I mentioned, 25,000 ebooks, and close to 600 journals. We're thinking about what does it look like if we become a publisher. Um, and the idea would be maybe to start with monographs and just do digital versions and have them paid into the open. For a modest sum of $400 to $500, load them onto the platform, and let's just see what happens. Also, you read the direct-to-consumer proposal. That was something that started at Project Muse with one of my colleagues to create an Amazon-like experience on Project Muse because you have the captive audience. Also, Muse's hosting platform developing a suite of services for publishers to take advantage of and not engage with us to only be concerned about what their royalty check is, but to establish deeper relationships with our publishers because really, we depend on them for the quality content. And what more things can we do for them? That's the question that we're actively asking. Very excited by the idea that we could be a publisher of content. I think that is something that would be a game changer, would radically change the industry and provide a way for emerging scholars to get some exposure and to get their content online. So stay tuned on that front, and you might be hearing more about that as the years pass or the months pass. And it's very exciting. It's kind of what keeps me engaged and running to work every day. And I have a lot of bright people that I work with, and we just kind of toss ideas around, and it's a lot of fun. And we do work hard keeping the core business afloat, which in today's challenging down economy, that's not an easy thing to do. So we've got a lot of priorities and a lot of drivers, and we're trying to not be all things to all people. As you move on from here into the GW program and begin taking other classes, I wanted to leave you with some words of wisdom from Peter Brantley. It will take an entirely different model of publishing to succeed, one that recognizes that costs of literary production are plummeting, distribution occurs on the network, and that entry points into storytelling are growing increasingly diverse. And Peter Brantley is an very prominent industry consultant. He formerly worked for the Internet Archive, and you can find his work around, and it's on Publishers Weekly. And he's also on the Project Muse Advisory Board. So, I guess my parting comments to you would be to embrace change, embrace the possibility, be open and willing to take part in what is going to be a very exciting future for publishing, and don't be afraid to be a leader in that realm, to step forward and to put your products forward and to make your case known. We need you, and all of the instructors in the program are very impressed with the work that you've done, and we enjoy teaching in this program because of you. I'll also share that, make friends and connections with your fellow students as you're doing. When I was in graduate school at the Columbia University, the one thing I took away from my creative writing experience there was the other students, some of the great writers of our generation: Jeffrey Eugenides, Tama Janowitz, Rick Moody, Camel McGrath, Victoria Riddell, um, many folks, William Rohrback, Vince Pizarro, a lot of those great people that are contributing to what's going to be remembered for a long time were in my classes, and it's the students that make it. So get to know one another, and most of all, have fun. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you for doing the work this semester. It was a joy, absolute joy, to be your instructor, and I'll talk soon. Take care.